and gentlemen, welcome back to Podcast Juice. My name is Michael Dean, and this is the podcast on Prince. And we have a special guest today. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Michael Koppelman to the show. Sir, how are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
And now you just blew my mind before we started. You just told us that your middle name is Dean. So now we have like two Michael Deans on the show. That's kind of crazy.
Yep, that was going to be my stage name, Michael Dean, but you stole it from me.
Well, you know, I try to represent it right out here in these streets. Hopefully I did. Also joining us is the man. Some people in our Discord chat say he's the voice of reason. I don't know about all that. No, stop playing. Mr. Big Sexy in Sax. Sir, how are you doing?
Oh, man, I'm doing great. Had some oral surgery a couple of weeks ago. I'm almost healed and back to normal from that. A lot of work going on in music. Got a couple of things in film I'm working on. All right. It's a good time.
All right, that's what's up. And and I may have butchered. You told me the pronunciation of your name. Say your last name again one more time.
Koppelman.
Koppelman. There we go. So I'll drop money in the bucket every time I say it wrong. Mr. Koppelman, let me tell these people out here who may not know who you are. You are very so you work with Prince through the years. I'm going to say it in album years because that's sometimes how we think of Prince. So you were there for Graffiti Bridge, Diamonds and Pearls, the Symbol album, and then you also were around for a lot of other groups and songs that came through Paisley Park during this time. That's just a small, and I mean a very small, part of Michael's career so far. I would venture to say he is an entrepreneur. We want to make sure we shout out Badger Hill Brewing. Am I saying that right, Greg?
Yep, that's perfect.
And tell us a little bit about that. That's something you got right now. What is Badger Hill Brewing?
It's a small craft brewery near Minneapolis. Around 10, 12 years ago, I saw the craft beer boom coming, as did many people, and always been a beer lover. And I was kind of looking for my next thing, and I got involved with this brewery named Badger Hill, and sort of became a co-owner and the head brewer for a while. And now it's kind of like my baby. So
nice. Okay, so you like to get your drink on.
Exactly.
I'm looking at the
beer
website.
Makes the world happier.
There you go, man. And I'm looking at the picture on the web. It looks so good. The blackberry kettle sour. Is that what it is?
Mm-hmm.
Man.
Yeah, we have all sorts of crazy beers now.
Okay. I love it. So I want to go back and we're going to talk about some Prince here. But I want to do, and I listened to your podcast that you did a few years ago where you did some Prince stories on there. It looks like you predominantly talk about some political stuff, which I love as well, on your podcast. But one of the things I gathered from listening to you, and I want to start with this, is it sounds like, and I think I come from the same generation. You come from the generation of younger people who grew up wanting to be rock stars. Is that a fair thing? Was that a thing?
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And
go
dreams
ahead.
die hard. It takes them a long time to die.
Well, I think that's an interesting time because, for us back then, music was everything. Like we listened to albums. We would deep listen to albums. Of course, there were hit songs. There were rock stars, pop stars, MTV and all of that stuff. And the emphasis on the musician, like if you was a musician or you could play an instrument, I feel, then you was like the badass. Like, oh, you could either be the sports dude, right? Or you could be the musician cat. And that was people that was looked at like, oh man, he the shit. Like, you know how to play. And of course, everything that sort of came with that, oh, you're going to be like a rock star dude. So a lot of us created bands or got into doing music and stuff. And like you said, some of us got our bubble busted as we started to really understand how the music industry probably worked. But in terms for you, I wanted you, if you could start to speak, like how did that sort of ideals get you on the path to getting to Paisley Park?
I kind of found myself when I played in my first band. Like I was kind of, I don't know, a pretty shy nerdy kid. And, we played a talent show. I think it was in 7th grade, and we played one of my original songs, and it was a, pretty terrible song in retrospect, but, I think it changed the way people looked at me, and it kind of changed the way I looked at myself. And my dad was a music teacher, and he needed a bass player for his jazz band. So he came home one day with an electric bass, like, here, learn to play this. I need a bass player. And, that was really the start of it. I was playing guitar within months, and I had that band probably within a year or something like that. And then I was playing ever since. So I was a person that only wanted to do music for the rest of my life, or so I thought at the time.
And then and was this so where did you grow up? Was this in Minnesota or?
It was in Grand Forks, North Dakota.
North Dakota. Okay.
North Dakota.
And what was yours, musically, what were you into at the time? Like,
I've always been into pop and rock, but, I was not into like the Stones, the Beatles, Led Zeppelin, the Who, none of the cool stuff. I liked Kiss and Alice Cooper and
hey. I love
Judas Priest.
Watch your stuff.
No, I love Kiss. I still love Kiss. But
all right.
People ridiculed me good-naturedly, hopefully, because they were listening to, the greatest bands of all time. And I was on a sort of different track listening to Styx and, Steve Miller Band and stuff like that.
Okay. And then, so what sort of notoriety, or how far did the group go? Like,
it was really just a very local cover band at that point in my life. It was like the best summer job I had, is we would travel around and play proms and bars and homecomings and stuff like that. And me, so pretty penny ante kind of a thing, but it also got me interested in recording. And I started recording on a 4-track at home. Okay. Around the same time, probably before I was even in high school, I was doing 4-track recordings. And then my band made a little record at the time, when we were still in like high school or whatever. But recording is kind of what led me to Paisley Park, is I loved recording. And, I told my parents, like, I don't really need to go to college. I can just go to LA and start working. And they were like, oh, no, you're not. You're going to college. And so I found Berklee College of Music, had a music production engineering program. So it's sort of the best of both worlds. I could do what I wanted, and I could make my parents happy at the same time. So that became the vector of my life at that point, was getting to Berklee College of Music.
Oh, wow. Okay. And were you like going there, like sort of studying or learning to be an engineer or sound recording and stuff like that? Or?
Yeah, my focus was on music production and engineering, but they make you be proficient at an instrument if you're there. And I love playing guitar anyway. So yeah, I took tons of guitar lessons and composition and all sorts of like normal music major stuff. But then they have a bunch of recording studios there. And it was my first chance to really work on, professional audio equipment.
And just so we can give people sort of the time frame, this is I would imagine that the 2-inch tape, 1/4-inch reels, and all that type. This was the analog days, like where you had to load up the tape. Was it Quantigy or Ampex?
Yeah, absolutely.
All that type of stuff. So yeah, okay.
Yep, I learned to cut and splice tape, and align the tape machines and do all that analog-y sort of stuff, as well as learning delays and reverbs and compressors and just all that other fun stuff.
Gotcha. And this was the hardwired days. It wasn't like the software. And everything you find today.
There was not a single computer in these recording studios.
Okay.
All right. The good times.
And so getting into graduating from Berklee, what was this? What year is this, like 88 or 89?
I graduated 88, yeah.
88, okay. So how do you, and is that in the Bay Area? Or
that's Boston.
New York. Oh, okay. Boston, okay, sorry. So how do you go from, so you graduate from here, do you just decide, hey, I'm moving to Minneapolis? Were you a fan of Prince at this time? What prompted you to move there?
I became a fan of Prince in the Purple Rain. Like I was a Purple Rain convert. I loved that movie. I loved the record. Mm-hmm. And I started working backwards on his catalog from there. So I went to a recording studio near Milwaukee. It was called Royal Recorders. But like literally I graduated, I don't know, on a Friday or something. And I started work on a Monday at this, as an intern, like an unpaid intern, at a really nice recording studio in the middle of nowhere in Lake Geneva, Wisconsin. And I was just, like I said, unpaid, bottom of the wrong kind of thing. but started doing some assistant engineering, and then I could also use the recording studio at night. So I worked with this rock band, Enough's Enough, there.
I remember that.
Yeah, a very poppy hard rock band, sort of fun guys. And I came to Minneapolis. I had friends here, and I just came like for the weekend, and sort of naively I just called Paisley Park, and I was like, "Hi, I'm an engineer. Can I get a tour of Paisley Park?" And they were like, "Sure, come on down." And I guess it didn't even occur to me that was kind of weird, but I went down there, and the studio manager showed me around, and he was trying to recruit recording engineers. So it was just perfect timing that I had called them. So he really started trying to hire me almost immediately when I got there. Because, Minnesota was not for sure then the epicenter of tons of, recording engineers, so we were a pretty rare breed back then. So I went back to Royal Recorders. I got fired for doing something stupid. I don't even remember what it was, or I threw my keys at the guy or whatever. We got into a fight. I came home, and on my recording machine, my answering machine was Paisley Park saying, "Hey, we'd like you to come work here," So it's like, this is like fate working here, And I started again at Paisley Park as an absolute bottom of the rung assistant engineer, working on everything but the Prince project, working in this, in the smallest studio, Studio C, and, sweeping the floors kind of a thing for the most part.
So the first time you go to Paisley Park, coming from the studio that you worked at before, and then coming to see that, were you impressed by it, or did it seem top of the line to you at the time? What was your perception of the studio when you first got there?
Yeah, I'd say it's the most amazing thing I'd ever seen. I'd been to some recording studios, but yeah, it was a cut above anything I'd ever seen. It was, you guys have probably been there, I guess. I'm not sure, but
yeah.
It's a beautiful building, and it was Prince at his height, really. He was still, we can get into that later, but he was kind of struggling with some of the records, but he was a huge fucking rock star, and he had millions and millions of dollars, and this was a super sweet recording studio, and it was busy as hell back then. Like, all the rooms were booked. Sometimes Prince couldn't get into his own studio. The sound stage would have Steve Miller Band rehearse there. They would shoot videos and movies in the back. So like, it was a bustling, awesome place.
Wow. Do you remember the gentleman, or I'm assuming as a guy who you first met when you got there, gave you the tour at all, or how did that work?
His name was John Dressel. He was the studio manager at the time.
Okay. And so they just literally like, yeah, come on in. We can show you around the place. And
literally showed me all around the place. Yep.
That's crazy.
And I met some people.
Go ahead.
Once I started working there, I realized how odd that was, because people don't just call Paisley Park and get a tour at that time.
Man, I guess you were just destined to be there, and then to get the call back when you got fired from the other place, and you was fighting with the hilarious.
It was kind of a crazy place.
So you start working at Paisley Park, and you said, what was your position? You was like an assistant, or
assistant engineer? Yeah,
assistant engineer. What was do you remember the first project that you worked on there?
I really don't. I remember this reggae band called Messenger. They were like this Canadian reggae band, but a lot of like things no one has ever heard of. Smaller bands and music for film and this and that. I can't think of anyone I worked with there that was like well known until I got on the Prince project.
And so this was, I assume this was like 88, 89. It must have been like 89. Right after. Okay, so this is like Batman time, I would imagine.
Batman had just come out. So Prince was kind of riding high because Batman was a pretty good record, and his reputation was soaring still at that point. So yeah, he was on a high at that point. So it was, again, a really fun place to be.
When was the first time you met Prince? What was that like?
Well, I was, I think I just happened to be standing nearby when he was trying to get into Studio A and the door was locked. So he was like, "Hey, can you open the door?" And I opened the door, and he went in and he closed the door, and that was it. And my heart was racing, and I was nervous. I'm like, "Holy fuck, I just fucking talked to Prince," and I just opened the door. Like I told this story, probably 400 times after that. Which is funny how people are, because I'll meet people that, who find out I worked with Prince, and they'll be like, yeah, I sold him a hamburger at McDonald's once, or I saw him at a movie theater. Like everyone has their Prince story from sort of this area.
That's hilarious. So that was the first time I listened to your podcast, and you were talking about some of the Prince stories. And one of the ones you told I thought was very funny and interesting was Prince trying to get into the vault.
Yeah.
Can you explain a little bit of that for the listener?
I think that was like the second time I interacted with him. And I think I was like the only one in the building for some reason. And Prince wanted to get in the vault. And so he was like, can you get in the vault? I was like, well, yeah, I can call Treese. Treese was his assistant. And yeah, I sure can get in the vault. So we go down there. There's a phone in the vault room, and I have Treese on the phone, and she's trying to talk me through. She tells me the comm, and then I try to open it, and it's not working. And so I call her back, and Prince is standing there just staring at me the whole time, sort of like ridiculing me. And that was like a pattern for our relationship, is like he made fun of me all the time. It was sort of funny. He sort of has a cruel but funny sense of humor. Like when I couldn't get the door open, he's like, get help. Like that's the extent of the words he said to me, get help. And eventually I got the door open, and that was sort of the end of it. That was the second time I talked to Prince.
Wow. So there's a combination to and he doesn't know what it is. That's interesting.
He didn't know.
Or didn't know. Wow. And then, okay. When do you first get into like a studio session situation with Prince? And do you remember what that was where you're working?
His engineer, Femi Gia, I believe did most of the Batman stuff, or I don't know Femi's whole discography, but Femi was his engineer, and he would work so much that we needed a lot of assistant engineers on the project, especially if all the rooms were working. So I don't remember how it happened, but I got put on the Prince project with Femi. Prince would kind of kick everyone out when he was working. So like I would come in, get everything set up, and then Prince would come in, and eventually I would leave, and Femi would be in there for 18 hours, and I would come in between if they needed some help with something. And then they'd go home, and I'd clean it up at the end. So it was sort of pretty passive, but, sort of bookending the project every day. And then one day Femi was gone, just like with everyone that ever worked for Prince. Like one day he was just gone. And that's when there was me and two other engineers, Tom Garneau and Dave Friedlander. And we were all of roughly the same sort of skill. We were very young noobs, but, very into it. And he started kind of using the three of us as his engineers. He was kind of playing us off each other, kind of like create like some competition in a good way, maybe. And we were super tight anyway. So like we were all just trying everything we could to keep Prince happy.
What kind of competition? What do you mean? Like,
well, like I remember him saying like, he's like, none of you guys here can mix. Like he'd say stuff like that. And I'd be like, you never let me mix anything. And that's how I got to mix the first thing I mixed for him, which is on Graffiti Bridge, the Can't Stop This Feeling I Got. So like all three of us would be doing shifts, and eventually it kind of became more and more me for whatever reason. I don't know why, but eventually I was kind of Prince's main engineer after Femi.
So so describe to us from your vantage point, what is a session like if you're the engineer with Prince? Like, how does that work?
Yeah. Regardless of where we were, like if it was at Paisley or in LA or in London or whatever, it was kind of the same. Like we would set up every single thing you could possibly want to use in a recording session. So we'd set up the drums, mic the drums, set up the organ, the piano, guitar, bass, any synthesizers, his vocal mic. They would like zhuzh the room up with, flowers and lava lamps and stuff like this. So whenever Prince walked in, like literally everything was ready to go. And then, as his main engineer, you were essentially just trying to enable whatever he wanted to do next. Like he'd come in and be like, give me the bass, or let's sample this thing. And just one after the other, he would want to do things. And like the more prepared you were, the better it went. You could just hand him the guitar, or he could go on the piano, and like literally everything was ready. And then he worked, his ass off. Sessions were 12, 18, 24 or more hours at a time. Man. And usually it was just one of us doing it. So he would just, I'd work from 10 a.m. till 10 a.m. and then I'd get called at 2 p.m. and come back in and do it all over again. Because he was Prince. He could sleep whenever he wanted. He could do whatever he wanted. And what he wanted to do was like work and play with girls. And that's really all he did at that era of his life.
We're going to get back to that part. But just stay here for a second. So, I mean, but do you like, are you in the control room with him, or do you just set it up and walk out, or, you know, just?
As the engineer, I was in there virtually all the time, except when he was singing.
Okay.
We had the vocal mic would come right over the console, like right to where his chair was. So he would sing and do all his own punching in and out right from the control room. So that I never saw him sing on the mic ever, I don't think. When we're recording, like once he was ready to sing, he would kick us out. But otherwise, I'd be in there almost all the time. As an assistant, like I was saying, you would set up and tear down. And for the most part, you weren't in there unless like the whole band was coming in or something more complicated. But normally it was just Prince and his engineer.
And so you're sitting in there, like, so if he's like, yo, I'm going to lay down this bass part, you're watching him play these things or get on the drums and stuff like that? Yeah.
Like, making sure the signal is going to tape okay, and obviously switching tapes, whichever song he wants to work on and stuff. And if he was doing something for a long time or he was working on something, I could slip out, but he never really kicked us out except when he was singing. So yeah, we would just sit and make sure it was all going down okay. He was sort of sitting in the engineer's spot, sort of, so he was kind of the main engineer in a way.
Okay. Was he
like sitting at the console?
Okay. And one of the things I always wonder, like on some, when he's doing vocals, obviously you're not there when he's singing, but in terms of like, if he wanted a certain effect on a vocal, like, okay, I want a delay when I'm singing this part, does he have you dial all this stuff in first, or does he doing those things? Like, I was always curious about that.
We would kind of get a bunch of reverbs and stuff ready. So we'd have 3, 4, 5 things already plugged up, and he could just turn the knobs to put reverb or something on. But if he wanted something specific, he would ask for it. Like with vocals, we would patch the mic into a whole bunch of tracks so he could sing as many tracks as he want without having to do anything. He would just record and enable the track he wanted.
Okay. And
then, but then once we got into more mixing and stuff, that's when he would be more opinionated about delays and reverbs or other like sonic effects.
So in terms of mixing, that's what I wanted. Going back to Can't Stop This Feeling I Got, you said that's the first song you got to work on. How did you, as a person doing the mix, one, I'm curious how long it took you to do that, and two, what did you base it on? Like, what were you going into this with? Like, okay, I'm going to mix this Prince record. Do you know what other? Oh, I guess I'm saying, you are a fan of his music to know, like, okay, he's looking for these types of things, or is he telling you, well, I want it to have this on it, or are the tracks pretty much all laid out and you're just literally just messing with the volume of the individual tracks? I was just curious how that worked.
It's kind of a combination of that. Like, with that first one, like I said, he was sort of like, none of you guys can mix. And I was like, well, you never let me try one. So like, okay, try this. And I'm guessing, I don't remember exactly, but it was maybe like 9 or 10 o'clock at night. And he was like, okay, mix this and Can't Stop This Feeling I Got. And, so I think most engineers, like, we like to start, or we do it our way. I pull down all the faders, I get rid of all the effects. I start from scratch, sort of. And, he probably called me 2 hours later. Like, are you done? I was like, nope, I'm not done. But he's like, okay, just drop it off at my house when you're done. And like pro engineers, like he had other mix engineers that would mix things for days or weeks, and he would give us minutes or hours most of the time. But I wanted to surprise him. So I made this like intro where I don't remember exactly, but I called myself on the phone. I had a mic on the phone, and I just made this weird intro to the song. And the mix, was fine. It wasn't great, but then I gave him the tape, and again, this was 30 years ago, so it's a little bit muddy, but
sure.
I think the next day he called me back in because I'd left the mix up, and then he and I sat there and finished it. But like, I remember when I mixed the song Diamonds and Pearls, like he came in and the first thing he did is grabbed all the reverb faders and turned them all down like 10 dB. Like he grabbed 10 faders at once because it was so soaking wet, and it's still soaking wet. That mix is just dripping in reverb. Like he was just like grabs the faders and pulls down all the reverbs. And then, you know, it would be very interactive at that point. Like he was very involved as we would do a version and then listen to it and do another version. And he'd go out to the club and come back, and then we'd do some more. And that's when he would sort of get like detail oriented.
Okay. And so Graffiti Bridge is an interesting period in terms of the album and the movie. Not knowing this at the time when I first heard the album when it came out, but now listening back to it, we realize that a lot of those songs were either redos of older songs he had in the vault or the original songs from the vault. Did you know that as you were working on it? So would he tell you like, hey, go get this track out of the vault, we're going to bring it up and work on it? Was there a lot of that type of stuff going on?
Yeah, I think with that one, it was sort of like, I don't know, cut together. Like he likes to cut the records together really early, like with rough mixes and stuff. So like there was a lot of stuff on there that I didn't really know. I didn't have anything to do with. I didn't really know where it came from. Like Joy and Repetition was totally done. But then, he'd send me down in the vault to pull up tapes of various things. And eventually if something was what he wanted, then we would cut it into the big reels of the two track master. So he could always have like a working copy of the record. With Diamonds and Pearls, it was sort of like that, but we started with rough mixes. We did all the rough mixes ourselves. He had a bunch of stuff from recordings in Japan and this and that, but like we cut the whole record together on like the first day kind of, and then we can incrementally improved it for like 2 years.
That's interesting.
Or at least a year.
And during this Graffiti Bridge period, I assume, he's either working on the album or I don't know if he's doing the new tour as well when that falls. But in terms of the movie stuff, how much of that were you aware of? Like, were you working on that as well, or?
Yeah, it sort of evolved because, they shot a lot of that movie at Paisley Park. And so he would work in the recording studio whenever he wasn't working on the movie set. And like we saw Kim Basinger was around, like his girlfriend, and she was in the script. And I didn't, I was only peripherally aware of all this, but then one day Kim was gone and Ingrid was there. And, so I'd wander back and see what they were shooting, or I went to one of their locations spots once, but for the most part, I was just in the studio doing like what we always did. As the movie got closer to being done, they were starting to edit it and mix it in LA. So I was out there for months, again, mainly just doing studio stuff. And then he would do kind of both. But for a while, he was inviting me to the film mix sessions. And I don't know, I was like cocky. I don't know why. I'm much less cocky now. But so I would be telling everyone what to do and shit like that. And not in a bossy way, but I was just like, I felt like I was Prince's representative, so I was kind of causing trouble, even though I was trying to help. And eventually Prince stopped inviting me down there.
What was your perception of the movie watching them edit it?
I thought it was fucking terrible. I was like, am I the only person that knows how terrible this movie is?
I'm sorry. Oh, Lord.
So I didn't ask you if I could swear or not.
Oh, no, you're good. You're good. No, you're good. No, so, but that's interesting. So you're deep in the camp at this point. You're an engineer there. You're watching them edit. Do you voice any sort of concerns? Or, obviously this is a Prince project. He's going to do what he want to do, but.
I really didn't. And I've second guessed myself on that. Like, Prince kind of needed people talking the truth to him. And it was a risky thing to do. Like, Prince kind of lived in this bubble, but no, I never said like, this is a terrible movie. And I remember the night it came out, he was like, we made $1 million tonight or something like that. And I was like, nodding and smiling and yay. And I knew that was the last dollar we were going to make off Graffiti Bridge, basically, because that movie was gone out of the theaters probably the next day.
What do you know what the general consensus, of your coworkers? Did they feel like, oh, this is going to be good or it's not so good? Or were you guys already working on something else by the time it came out? That was the other thing I wanted to ask.
I'm sure we were. I don't remember exactly, but I didn't really see the movie until it was like cut together when they were mixing it in LA. And that's when it was evident to me that it was terrible. Like it lacked all of the cool things of Purple Rain, which was filmed on location, like wet streets and dirty places. And it has a very realness about it. And doing it in the soundstage was a terrible idea. In my opinion, I don't know anything, but it just seemed really fakey and the script was dumb. And I thought it was a perfectly good record, but I don't know what my colleagues thought at the time. At those film mixes and stuff, I kind of wanted to, I didn't, but say out loud, like, this is terrible, right? Like, how can we fix this? This is not like good enough, but Prince liked it. It was Prince's project and that was that.
Did you also have any work on the Times album that also came out, the Pandemonium? You remember anything about
I'm sure
that?
I did. I don't really remember that. I only met Morris Day once. So I don't think I was very intimately involved with that Time record. No.
Okay.
Prince would work on shit all the time though. So he didn't need the time there in order to work on the Time record. You know?
Okay. And then just as you being a musician yourself, you said you got into Prince during the Purple Rain time and then went back. It's sort of the same way for me, you know, went back and then, you know, hearing Controversy, Dirty Mind, What did you think of the music though at this particular time, like the Graffiti Bridge and then going into Diamonds and Pearls? What did you think of the music though, being a fan of Prince and seeing that?
I liked, you know, a lot of it. And I thought a lot of it wasn't that good. He kind of went through this era and between Graffiti Bridge, Diamonds and Pearls and the Symbol record of like really overproducing things, or like he would have a million loops and a million bass parts and raps. And like eventually we'd have 48 tracks, like two 24-track machines synced up together. So like just tons and tons of tracks. And what I liked about Prince was things like the song Sign of the Times, which has got like 6 tracks, and all the Dirty Mind Controversy type stuff, which is like super stripped down. So it was like slightly distressing for me. I'm like, my jokes at the time was like, Prince should be given an 8-track and told to go home and make records. Like all this machinery is not helping him make better records. And he was kind of trying to find himself in this, of course, just my opinion. I know nothing, but just seemed like he was kind of trying to find himself because he liked all this music, this hard rap sort of stuff that he just was trying to emulate sort of. And it just seemed like a weird spot for him to be in because, you know, he was like a leader and very creative genius. So I just didn't understand why he was trying to be something he wasn't, in my opinion. But so it was kind of frustrating for me. Like, come on, why do we have all this shit on these songs? Like, let's strip this down, you know?
What was it like working, you know, when you started doing the Diamonds and Pearls and there's the more of a band presence? At least it's from, again, as an outsider listening to it, it sounds like more of a band type of production. How did that work in the studio?
It was great. I mean, there was one time in particular when we were in London because they were playing Wembley Arena or like 7 nights in a row or something like that. And so I came over there and I was setting up a recording studio every day. And I forget, the band must have been on a day off or something, but the whole band came in and we recorded a ton of songs like in a day or two, a lot of which ended up on all of these records and some which are probably just still in the vault. But the band was great and it was a fun dynamic. Prince, you know, I would say didn't fully, I mean, there was, I don't know how to write the word this. Let me word it the other way. There was musicians he respected, like Sonny, the bass player. Prince respected. I never saw him tell Sonny what to do. Levi and he had a really good relationship. So there were certain musicians that Prince just kind of, I don't know, felt like were his peers. And that band was full of them, you know, Michael Bland, Sonny on the bass, Levi. It was a great group.
Well, all right. What about Rosie Gaines? That's one of my favorites as well. And that's when she really started to flourish and come out during that time. Did you ever get to interact with her?
Yeah, I worked with her a lot in London and at Paisley Park. And she was a phenom. Like she was amazing. I remember one point Prince wanted like some heavy breathing, like sexy sort of heavy breathing stuff. And he had brought some girls home from the club one night and he was trying to get them to do this like sexy breathing on the mic and it was just a joke. And then Rosie came in and just absolutely killed it the first take, and not to mention what a great singer she was too, and such a wonderful spirit. So no, she was super awesome to work with.
Oh, this is your hippie chick story. Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah.
Did my research, Mike. So you're talking about Prince brought some girls to the studio. Was that something that happened? I don't know if common, but from time to time? You mentioned you like to play music and you like to play with the ladies.
Yes. He would always have someone kind of on his arm, and like he would literally order them out of magazines. Like if he saw a model in a perfume ad, he would go up to Therese and say like, find her, like send her here. I don't know how it worked, but like these girls would just show up. I should say so women. Cool. So he would have a different hot woman with him, all the time. And sometimes he'd have a kind of a girlfriend for a little while, but for the most part, it was just kind of like someone new all the time.
Wow.
So like they would sit in the studio with him a little bit, but not much. Like I remember Kim sitting there a few times, sitting in the studio with us, but mainly he would pick them up and go to the club and do whatever, and then come back to the studio like 2, 3, 4 in the morning, and we'd start working again.
Man, how did you guys do that? Man, those are long hours, man. Like, so when he's at the club, are you still in the studio?
Usually he would it'd be 10 or 11, and he'd be all dolled up for the club, and he would give me a list of stuff to do. And then I couldn't really leave until he told me to. So usually he would come back. Some nights I'd get a call that, we were done for the night, at 2 a.m. or something like that. But I was young, I was in my early 20s. So I could survive it. But yeah.
Did you love that? I mean, did you feel like this is great? I'm doing
it was fun. I mean, I worked all the time, and like it kind of sucked that I was living with a bunch of my friends, and they would do all this stuff that I never could do, I was not going to parties or going out to the bars and this and that very often because I was always working, but I was working with Prince. So like there was certainly a lot of upsides. Right. With that.
What did it feel like when the albums came out and, This Is Your Work is on there, you see your name in the credits? What was that like?
It's amazing. Like I remember, with Graffiti Bridge, I forget if it's Graffiti Bridge or Diamonds and Pearls, but at one point I had the masters. So like the cut together 2-track masters, these big reels of side 1 and side 2. And I don't know why, but I had them in my car. I was taking them somewhere. I was supposed to ship them, or I don't know what I was doing. But so I think I was at like, this shitty little bar in Minneapolis with my friends with Prince's masters out in my car, which have since been reproduced, millions and millions of times. So it's just kind of funny. I'll hear a song off Graffiti Bridge. I'll be like, yep, that tape was in the back of my Hyundai, 30 years ago.
That's crazy.
But it was such a blur. Like we never celebrated things. That was one of the downsides of working all the time, is like by the time a record came out, we were already halfway into the next record, and Prince did not believe in like celebrating things. He wanted to work, and that was it. So it was you never felt like, yay, we accomplished something and high fives and like never stuff like that. It was just work, 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 work.
Well, Mike, let me ask you this. When you had the masters in the back of the car and you're at the little bar here, are you telling me that you didn't go to a couple of ladies? So girls, you got the masters in the back of the car.
You want to see these things? They open the trunk and that bright light shines.
No, I think it's safe to say I really never got laid because of Prince.
Oh, man. You had one job.
Maybe I did. I don't know.
Yeah, okay. So we're talking about Diamonds and Pearls. So I mean, this is the time too. I feel like, when he came out with Get Off, that was like a, the light post, it was a moment right there. Okay, like Prince is rapping. And that song was dope. Like to me, as a fan of hip hop at that time, I was shocked. Totally. I was like, wow, okay. How did this happen? Like in terms of, and we spoke about it earlier, just the influence of hip hop, you couldn't be denied. But then on one hand, I always saw Prince was like the trendsetter. And then it was like, okay, he has to sort of, he has to acknowledge what's happening out here in these streets. in terms of music, but but he also has to maintain, like, he's the leader. But I think at that point he started to really meld it together. And one of the things I wanted to ask you was in terms of like, that's when I noticed, like the bass drum, and I assume like 808 bass and things started to sort of creep into his records. Is that a conscious thing that he's telling engineers to do, or just how did that sort of come around? Because it sort of changes his sound a little bit.
Yeah. And I probably told this story on my podcast, but like there was no computers in the recording studios with us early on. There were some samplers and stuff, but I had this like Mac Portable, this little Macintosh with a MIDI interface, and we were at Larrabee in LA, and I showed it to Prince. I was like, hey, check this out. And a keyboard hooked up to it, and I'd hit record and play something and show him. It was sort of like MIDI for the first time. I'm sure he was aware of MIDI, but like this was kind of new, like, and we did this little thing, and then my computer crashed and we lost it all. And he just laughed like he always did, just ridiculed me sort of. By the time I left, we had racks of computer equipment, samplers, drum machines, like MIDI, everything. So like we went from having literally like no MIDI to having tons of computers and tons of drum machines and tons of samplers. Like when I started with him, he still had that Lindrum, that you hear on Purple Rain. Like almost everything he would do, he would start with that Lindrum, and by the end, I don't even think that was in the rack anymore.
Wow. And would he, in terms of like when he started songs, and I guess these were more band recordings, so maybe they're working during rehearsals and things, like how many passes do you remember? Like just on a random, like how many times would they go through the song before they like, okay, that one's good? Or would they do it a couple times? Or I was just very curious the process of that.
Yeah, for the live stuff, they would do it a few times generally. Prince, always kind of knew what he wanted. So it was normally just trying to create what was sort of in his head already. I don't remember keeping a lot of takes and stuff like that, though. I mean, it was sort of, he kind of knew when we had it and when we didn't. So okay. I don't really remember how many times they went through that stuff.
All right. And you also, you worked with Ingrid Chavez during this as well. What was that like? What was that experience like?
It was awesome. I liked Ingrid. I met her during Graffiti Bridge. I think I'd actually met her before then, like in a non-Prince related fashion, but I liked her immediately. Like I remember she would, people asked her what she'd do, she would say, I'm a poet. And she like tended bar or something. But she's like, if I don't visualize being a poet, I'll never be a poet. I'm not going to tell people I'm a bartender, I just liked her free spirit. And I know Prince did too. I mean, that sort of free spirit thing about Ingrid was what was really cool about her. And we did end up hanging out a little bit during the movie, and we'd both be out in LA and stuff. And that's when Prince kind of put us together and said, like, well, actually, I don't know if you want to get into the whole Ingrid Chavez arc or not, but Prince was making
we love Ingrid. Yeah, go ahead.
Prince was making a record from her poems. So at some point he had recorded her just reading all these poems, and he just started doing music and then sampling the poetry back in, like Elephant Box and Heaven Must Be Near and stuff like that. And I was like, can I do one? And he was like, sure. So the song, Winter Song on her record was like my first thing I really produced for Prince. And I think I did it on my computer, and we were out in LA, and he liked it. And I was like, can I do another one? And then I did Candle Dance, which I was really proud of on the Ingrid project. And then he put us together. He was like, well, why don't you guys like write a song? And we did Hippie Blood. And it was really fun. We loved it. We were having a blast, and we thought it was a great song. And I don't know if there's this controversy afterwards that Ingrid, with the best of intentions, took that song to Warner Brothers and played it for him before Prince had heard it. And Warner Brothers loved it and got super excited about it. And Prince was pissed. He sort of felt like Ingrid shouldn't have gone around him. And again, she wasn't trying to do anything. She was just sharing a awesome demo that we had made the night before, but I remember she and Prince kind of getting into it, and I don't know if they kicked me out or I left the room, but the two of them kind of argued about it. And Prince kind of washed his hands of the Ingrid album after that. He gave it to Ingrid and me and Levi to finish, which was great. So I don't know exactly what happened, but I think Ingrid just kind of said, like, let me make this record or whatever. I don't know. But Prince almost undermined it after that. I don't know if I could say undermined it, but he certainly didn't promote it much. I don't know why. He started it all. He thought it was great. He put us together, write some songs, and then somehow he got mad and kind of got orphaned after that. So I think the record could have done a lot better than it had if there wasn't this push-pull between Warner Brothers and Prince over it.
So even at this time, there's the Warner Brothers Prince kind of dramas lingering around in the background there.
Yep.
Interesting. And then, so then that album obviously does come out. What other album? There was, did you do anything on the T.C. Ellis album?
Yeah.
Stop it.
Yeah.
Stop it.
I remember TC being around and working on that. Yep.
All right. Yeah. Shout out to TCL. He's actually a good dude. He's a good guy.
I haven't talked to him in 30 years, but he was a very good guy.
What did you think? And I've heard some of your views on this on your podcast, but what did you think of the rap influence on Prince's music at that time?
Yeah. I don't know if you call it rapping or not, but Prince had that sort of spoken kind of like, people call me rude. I wish we all were nude, like stuff like that. And kind of Get Off had similar kind of, once Tony started rapping, and Tony is an awesome guy, but I think it was, I don't know anyone that really likes that Tony rapping stuff on the Prince records. Maybe some people do. I don't know. Tony himself was like, I'm not a rapper. I don't know why he's having me do this. Like, I'm not a rapper. But, he went with it and he got writing on some of those songs. I'm sure it worked out really great for him. But no, I didn't like it. Most of those songs I didn't like to start with. And because it was the stuff I was saying where it's just layered up with a million drums and a million everything and just this wall of sound thing, which is sort of the opposite of what I like. And then I thought the rap stuff didn't really work myself. What do you guys think? Do you like the rappy stuff like from that era?
No.
I liked it at the time. Some of it, like some of the songs, I think are great. What's the one I want to say off the top? Let me take your money. What's that song?
What?
Rosie's Games is on the song pretty heavy too. I don't know why it's blinking out on me. They did that. It's the one with the Steels, I think, is singing on it.
Willing and Able?
Willing and Able. I like Tony's rapping on that.
That was good. Yeah, that was a good piece there.
Totally agree. Love that song. And I think that it really worked on that song.
Yeah. Recently, actually yesterday, Chuck D has come out in full support of Tony M. He tweeted, "Hey, I always loved Tony M." And listening to it, I can hear the Chuck D influence on Tony at that time. And Chuck D was the man at the time. But I have a different appreciation for it now as opposed to back then. But I get it. I was one of the people like, I don't know. But meeting him and then just getting older and listening to the records, I appreciate the influence of that because it changes Prince's stuff up. And listening to it now, I like that his stuff kind of goes up and down and around, and it's not all just controversy. It's not all just 1999 style. It's all these different things, and so I can appreciate it.
Well, the fact that Mike just said that Tony was saying, "Look, man, I'm not a rapper," but he took a swing at it, man. You got to respect that.
Oh, absolutely,
totally,
absolutely. But and then I was wanting to ask you about the Carmen Electra record, and if you were around for that, or if you worked on any of that stuff.
I did, yeah.
What were those sessions like? Yeah.
It was so funny because he brought her to Minneapolis, and she's this cute little thing, and a good singer, a good presence and stuff. But he just kind of had her on ice almost for a while. He had her in this little apartment. Like in Eden Prairie, Minnesota, not even close to Paisley Park and stuff. And she wasn't around that much. And then he would call her in every once in a while. So I don't know exactly what was going on, but it was just kind of a weird relationship between those two. I don't really remember much about working on that project, though.
Okay. You mentioned on your podcast Paula Abdul. I thought that was kind of funny what you said. What was, because I remember, I can't think of the song Prince did for her, but I know he did a song for Paula Abdul.
Yeah, I don't remember it off the top of my head. What was that?
I'll try.
He thought she was a terrible singer, and she is a terrible singer. I think it's safe to say. But Prince is a perfect singer. Like Prince's pitch is perfect, literally all the time. So he was super sensitive to and intolerant of anything out of tune in the slightest, like vocally. So I remember when we were mixing that Paula Abdul song. I think we had some sort of a pitch corrector thing.
Like
I don't remember how we were doing it. Sort of. I don't remember. I just remember that the amount of correction it was doing on her voice was just off the hook, and Prince sort of pointed at it and laughed. I don't think we had auto-tune back then, so I can't remember exactly what it was. But anyway, he thought she was a terrible singer. But
wow, the song was You. That's what the song was, titled You.
Right.
Wow. So okay. So yeah, I guess I could see why he would do a song for her. I mean, she was big at the time. Like I remember Paula Abdul.
Yeah, she was the biggest artist in the world for a while, right, in those years. So yeah, right. It made total sense.
That's funny. Great dancer, though. I will give her that. Choreographer.
And Carmen went on to do a lot of stuff that was good to see.
Say good to see. Hilarious. All right. Oh, there's one. I've noticed you had your hands in a lot of music that came through Paisley Park. There was one group in particular. You might not even remember this, but I remember when it came out, and I loved this album, and I liked the group. It was the Boys. Do you remember the Boys coming through?
I do remember the Boys.
Oh,
yeah,
man.
Because the main kid from that, he was young at that time.
I think Hakeem, is that it?
Yeah, Hakeem. Yeah. He was fucking brilliant.
Yeah.
He was really, it was a fun record to work on, and talking with him was just hilarious. I remember teaching him how to play 9-ball, and he beat me, and he thought that was the funniest thing in the world, like on the pool table. But no, he was, I kind of looked him up recently. I was like, what happened to him? Because he was really good.
He was badass. Yeah, he was badass.
I think he go on to do more cool stuff. I don't know.
They did a third album, which they totally produced themselves, and which I thought was incredible. And then they just disappeared. And I think they ended up moving out of America for a while. But it looks like whatever they're into, they look like they're happy and stuff. I say that much. But yeah, I always remember they did it. I would look at the credits, and I was like, oh, they recorded this at Paisley Park. I was like, what? And I think it was like a slow song or something. My Heart or something like that. But I always wanted to ask. Also, were you there for any of the Hammer stuff? I remember hearing reports that Hammer was at Paisley Park for a while.
Yeah. My buddy Tom Garneau, one of the early engineers I'd mentioned earlier, did most of this stuff on that. But yeah, he was in Studio B at Paisley Park. I don't think they did the whole record there, but they mixed a lot of the record there. And he was there with his whole entourage and everything. I helped on mix a couple songs on that project, but I really didn't do much on it.
Okay. What about Martika? Were you there for any of that? Martika's Kitchen?
Yes, I love the song "Love Thy Will Be Done." I think it's one of Prince's best songs. And he finished that song and sang it all himself and did all the harmonies and everything before he gave it to her. So I love the Prince version of that song, but she did a great job on that. And then, yeah, Martika's Kitchen, I thought was fun. I never met her, and I remember trying to remix. I forget some big mix engineer, I think, mixed Martika's Kitchen, and then Prince wanted some changes. So I had to put it back up and try to fix this mix. And it was a complete disaster. I don't remember what happened, but that's all just random memories of that project.
This was it? And I'm not throwing nobody on the bus. This is not like one of them Shep Pettibone mixes or something. Was
I don't know what you're referring to, but no, I don't think so.
Oh, okay. You don't remember that guy used to remix everything. She was
everything.
Shep Pettibone, or
yeah, that's him.
Anyway,
did he work with Prince? I don't remember.
Apparently, yeah. There was. He did. I didn't know it. We don't know it until the Sign of the Times remaster just came out. But he did was it Strange Relationship, Mark?
Mhm.
Apparently, he missed it. It just never was
Hot
released.
Thing and
Hot Thing. Oh, see, stop playing.
I was just Googling him while we were talking. Yeah, he looks like he did work on a few Prince songs.
Yeah. And I'm just kind of throwing some of these now. Tevin Campbell. Were you around for any of the Tevin Campbell stuff? Obviously, he was on Graffiti Bridge. But.
Yeah, I think I remember recording him, and he was awesome. And he was really young then, and a great singer, and very quiet, shy kid. So I don't even remember having like a conversation with him. But he was around during the filming of the movie. And what's that song called again?
Round and Round.
Round and Round.
Yeah. Love Tevin Campbell. I have to go here now, but so we talked about the beginning. How and why did it end? Like, how did you stop working with Prince?
I just sort of as a prelude, there was a point where Prince wanted to start calling everything as produced by Paisley Park. So like Levi and me and him and like all under this Paisley Park thing. And I was sort of like, I don't know, arguing with him or talking about, I was like, it doesn't help me if you get mad and fire me. No one's going to know that I was part of Paisley Park. Like it doesn't, and he's like, well, first of all, I don't get mad and fire people. They fire themselves. And
great.
That sounds like Prince.
Exactly. So I was starting to get sick of Prince. Like I'd worked for, I was getting my ass worked off for a couple of years, and I played acoustic guitar and rock and roll. And like, I just sort of felt like I wasn't in my sweet spot. And I totally question this now. Like, what the fuck, dude, you're working for Prince, like ride it out, but I was kind of getting sick of it. And I was doing more and more for him. I was playing more instruments. I was writing, I was producing. So there was a time where he was like, I'm going to take you downtown and like sign you up. And I wasn't that enthusiastic. And I think he could kind of tell. I was like, I don't know. And he never took me down and signed me up. But the end happened when it was right up before Christmas time. I was in LA and I had booked my ticket home, and the math worked out that I could land, get in my car and get home for Christmas Eve. And there was a mastering session. So this is like the 22nd of December, something like that. A mastering session, probably for the Symbol record. And I got fired from Prince because of a bad nut that I ate. That night in the hotel room, I opened a can of nuts. I'm eating them. And one kind of looked weird as it went by, and I didn't really think anything about it. And I woke up later just violently ill, like totally, I'm not leaving the room ill. And I'd called Teresa's assistant. I was like, there's no way I can get to that mastering session, but he doesn't really need me. The mastering guy, knows what to do. And I really just sit there and drink coffee and talk with him while he does what he does, So I was like, he can master anyway, like send the tapes over and it'll be fine. And for some reason, the tapes didn't get sent over and the album didn't get mastered. So Prince wanted me to stay for the next day and master that. And I was still feeling sick. I had a plane to catch that day. I had this belief that I was not needed at that mastering session. And I told Therese, no. And she's like, is that what you want me to tell Prince? I was like, yes. And that was the end. I never worked on that project ever again. So like after the new year, I went back to Paisley Park. I'm like, what's up? And she's like, yeah, he's in there. He's got whoever, Tom or Steve or someone in there. And I, hung around Paisley Park for another month or two, kind of, doing some other things. And then I just happened to sign up an agent to represent me as a producer. So he started getting me some work right then. So then I just, resigned from Paisley Park.
Wow. So you said no, essentially. That's what happened.
I said N no. Followed by O. Yep.
Wow. Yeah. Looking back at your time there, and then in terms of where we are now, and obviously Prince isn't here with us anymore. What do you think of your time, and then what do you just think overall, like Prince means to you or to everybody else?
Well, I think his musicianship is sort of unparalleled in like pop music. Like he was truly I don't know. He has no peers like musically. I say like he could have hung with, Miles Davis or Mozart or like pick anyone from any genre and Prince could probably hang with him. He had no formal training. Like he would laugh at me if I called things by their correct musical terms. Like, like if I referred to a C7 chord, he'd be like, oh, Mr. Fancy Pants who knows all the names of everything, He didn't know the name of anything. He just intrinsically knew it, So he was a genius, unquestionably, in my opinion, musically. I've never seen anyone as good as him. He asked me once, if someone's a genius, are they always a genius? I don't remember what I said because it's a super hard question, and I don't know why he asked that or what he was getting at. But, I think he's made a lot of subpar music. I think a lot of the super fans maybe love it all, but your average person, they don't realize how much Prince music they've never heard and probably don't want to hear. He's got like 30 records. They're not all great. You can mention his top records and they're great, but he put out a lot of kind of subpar music because it's the only thing he sort of knew how to do and wanted to do. He didn't do other things. He wrote and recorded and played music, and that was it, besides the girl stuff. So, I think he was struggling with trying to be relevant and trying to do hits, and at the same time, maybe not fully aware of how, I don't know, I can't really say. People loved him. They're afraid of him. Like, rock stars were like nervous around him and shit like that. So it's like his persona was ginormous, even regardless how shitty his music was at times. And I don't mean shitty, but like he had many records without hits and stuff like that. And he was still just a phenom, so it's kind of sad that he didn't quite understand what we loved about him. Like I think he was always trying to achieve something new, and that's good, but I don't know. I'm not making sense.
No, I kind of reading about what you're saying. You just said rock stars kind of feared him or afraid of him. What do you mean by that?
Well, it's just like something about his persona. I mean, he's this 5'2", very smallish person who was intimidating as fuck. Like, and I don't exactly know why, but like everyone would get nervous around Prince for some reason, and he kind of liked that. I think he didn't do a lot to try to make people not be nervous. He sort of liked being Prince. My joke was like, he thinks he's that kid from Purple Rain. That's who Prince wanted to be, is that guy from Purple Rain.
Interesting.
I think there's a quote from Jimmy Jam that he said years ago. He said, Prince is the only guy who can come into any situation, pick up your instrument and play it better than you. And I'm sure a lot of other people felt that way. Mike, let me ask you this. About his musicianship. When he played at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and everybody was just blown away and all that, were you like me in the sense of saying, okay, it was good, but I've seen him do better? And you weren't surprised by it?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's an amazing solo. And I think, Eric Clapton reaction really solidified it as a seminal moment in music history. That I think it's that funny comment he made about the greatest guitar player in the world. But yeah, I've seen him do miraculous things. I've seen him write songs or, fool around with musical ideas that I would make great alternative records or great pop records. Like he has this huge vocabulary and he would do things and he'd be like, oh, you like that sort of shit, don't you? I was like, yes, that's awesome. So he could have done so much more. Like he literally, I would say, was almost unlimited in terms of what he could do. And that's why as someone on the inside, I was like, why are you doing this stuff when I can see what you're capable of? And obviously he made a lot of great music, but the less great music, I was just sort of like, why are you doing this? You can do whatever you want. Why are you choosing to do this? But he taught us sort of early on, like, don't expect me to do crap. I'm going to do what I do. Like after Purple Rain, Around the World in a Day came out, and it was a huge left turn from Purple Rain. It's a great record, but it was not Purple Rain 2 in the slightest, and nor was anything. Like Prince did not like expectations. He was going to do it his way.
Did you
when he died? That was the quote
I
said on Twitter. I was like, the lesson of Prince is like, do it your way. The end.
Did you continue to follow him musically after you stopped working with him at all?
I did. It was kind of hard to keep up because he does put out a lot of stuff. So I sort of lost track. I remember when 3121 came out, I sort of liked that record and I sort of dug back into that records. But a lot of records I basically have not even heard.
When's the last time you've been to Paisley Park? Have you gone after his passing at all, or you worked on anything? Or?
I drove by there when he died, just to see like the spectacle of it. And then I went on a tour at Paisley with some friends of mine that had never been there just like last year or something. And it was fun to see it all again. We have so many stories from there. So I was joking about like where we would go smoke weed and where there's hidden cavities and where there's secret passageways and just all the stories that happened while we were there and stuff.
Wow. What do you think of it? I mean, do you like that it's open as a museum?
I do. My thought after he died was like, wouldn't it be great if Paisley Park became almost like a school of rock for, hip hop and rap and stuff like that, where people are coming there to make music, kids and other people, just like really make it a living museum of music. But I think what they did is, interesting and classy. And I think people like it. And I think they're trying to get the rooms working again where they can actually do projects and stuff out there. So yeah, I think it's cool. I like I said, I wish it was more driven to bring people into music, especially like there's no way to go to mess around with stuff, if you don't have the stuff. Luckily these days a laptop can do a lot, but yeah, I think it's cool.
All right. And now as a long time music head, where do you see music today? Do you pay attention to it still? What's your thoughts on just music in general? I think it's changed so much in terms of we have Paisley Parks in our Macintosh computers now. And, I've never been huge into rap per se, but I love the low entry. Like you can download a loop off YouTube and write a song on top of it and record it on your phone and like do it right now and not have to pay anyone anything. And that's awesome. I think there's almost no barriers now to getting into music. So I sort of believe like there's no rules, create, have fun. It's all great. As an audio engineer, part of me is like, but then learn your craft, like this is a craft. Making music sound good is a craft. Anyone can do it, but there's things you have to be aware of and learn, and you can make your music a lot better if you have that sort of interest. So, like my kid and his friends, they write songs and they do raps and all this stuff. And I just try to inch him along on what all these tools can do, like he's like, what's a compressor? And I'll show him how it can make your song sound way louder or make the vocals sound way better. Like if you just know a few little things. So I think it's great again, and I'm not dogging on it, but I do think there still is this craft for making great sounding music. Okay. Well, another thing I wanted to ask you, because now that you own or operate your own company, and I assume you have a team of people that work for you or work with you, what would you learn from your time working there as an engineer under Prince? The work ethic, the long hours, and all of that. What is it? Do you take anything from that helps you in what you do today, good or bad? Like, just what did you learn from that experience that could help you today?
Well, I learned a lot of like little things about the craft of making records. Like I loved how Prince would cut the records together really early in the process. So he was listening to it together and he would cut the songs really tight together to make it, almost like this constant song. And the way if he made a mistake, he would explore that mistake. He'd hit a wrong note, he'd hit it a few more times, just to see what it was trying to tell him. On the bad side, like he really wasn't a leader in a normal sense. Like he had an amazing group of people and he could have done even more amazing things, like with Paisley Park Records, with all of the proteges and stuff he had. It was just, I don't know, it was all about Prince to Prince. And he just let a lot of great people go. Not talking about myself, like literally every person. And I knew these people and they were great and they loved their jobs and they were great at their jobs. And somehow one at a time, we all just disappeared. And to me, that was a failure on Prince's part. The record company could have been great. He could have done more, but he didn't really want to be a leader. He wanted to work on music, so I try to be the opposite. Like I try to be a great leader where it's not about Michael Koppelman. And I don't know if that's because of Prince or not, but that's kind of how I look at it.
Okay. I mean, that's a good thing because we've talked to a number of people who have worked with Prince and they're phenomenal, super talented. And a lot of them speak on, the work ethic and the level of excellence that Prince had. He wanted this stuff to be right and everything. But I sometimes I hear like, man, it seemed like I always have to ask the question, well, why did you stop working with it? What happened? And it's just interesting. I always wonder what was the team dynamic as people who worked there. And you kind of spoke on it. It seemed like it was almost like you were maybe on walking on eggshells sometimes. You didn't want to mess up. It seemed like there was a strong, you don't want to make a mistake in front of him type of deal. And I wonder if that, okay. Yeah, I just always wondered about that,
Yeah, we wanted to be perfect. The engineers, the road crew, people in the office, like, I think we totally got that we were in a special place with a special person. And that's kind of what made it sad that he seemed, all of us have a why I got fired story. And we have a group on Facebook where a bunch of us PRN alumni talk about things. And it's really funny to see all the stories of how people left. It's never pretty, Yeah.
All right. Well, Mark, Big Sexy, do you have anything else you want to?
I did have one quick question. Looking at your Lowlife page, Mike, I see that you are a Magic guy, the card game and the up close magic tricks. Tell me about that.
Yeah. Well, I kind of have a short attention span. I like to do a lot of different things and I kind of get into them a lot and then I eventually get back out of them again. So yeah, on my page, I talk about, ham radio and rocketry and stuff like that. But I don't know. Do you play Magic the Gathering or are you a close-up magician?
No. My best friend is a close-up magician, actually. And I've never played Magic the Gathering, but I see tournaments all the time at my comic shop. And I'm like, what is going on here? So I've never really, jumped into it. It's ubiquitous though at all the comic shops I go to.
It is, yeah. It's a great game. I don't really play it much anymore, but I love how it's a game where the rules are on the cards. So you never know the rules of the game until you're playing it that hand. So it's a very dynamic game in that sense. But yeah, I fooled around with Magic too, just with magic trips. I kind of like revealing the hidden, like I did astrophotography, where you point a camera at the sky, you leave it open not long enough, and you see all sorts of amazing things, And I just kind of like uncovering things like that.
Interesting stuff. All right. Michael, where can people find you online, sir?
Well, I'm at lowlife.com, LOLIFE.com. I used to be Lowlife on Twitter, and I rage quit Twitter at one point, but I'm back on there now. There's like M. Koppelman something or other, but Facebook, everywhere else, yeah.
And of course, Badger Hill Brewing. Is that an actual physical location you can go to?
Yeah. Please come visit Badger Hill Brewing. I got one of my gold records up on the wall there. We've got a Prince riding the Pee Wee bicycle, Pee Wee Herman bike. I don't know if you've ever seen that picture, but
no.
We have a new beer called Paisley Hazy, which is not, a Prince beer, but it's based, it's supposed
inspired,
to be suggestive of, yes.
There you go. We don't want to get nobody in trouble. Awesome, man. Well, yeah, next time I come out there, I'm definitely going to check you out for sure, man. Absolutely.
If you guys, when you come up, let me know. I'll go to Paisley or you can come by for a beer.
Absolutely. All right, ladies and gentlemen, please show Michael some love in the comments. Of course, you can check us out on YouTube, on your favorite podcasting platform. Also, the website, podcastjuice.net. Big Sexy and Sack, thank you, sir. And as I always say, work it like a job. We'll see you next time. Peace.